Hi, this is Chris Widener, and I'm the president of Made for Success. I'd like to thank you for purchasing this audio program, but even more, I'd like to congratulate you for taking your personal growth and development seriously. The fact that you're listening to this CD program shows that you are in the top 10% of people in our country, and if you apply the information, you'll catapult yourself into the top 1%. In just a moment, the audio program will begin, but I want to encourage you to listen after the message to find out how to get another audio program free of charge at my website, www.chriswidener.com. At chriswidener.com, we have even more fantastic resources to help you in your journey of personal growth, including articles, audio programs, books, MP3s, and a free newsletter. As a professional speaker, I've spoken to such groups as Cisco Systems, General Electric, and students at the Harvard Business School. Now it's our turn to spend some time together on a journey of personal development. So let's get to it.
We are all in for a treat because today's speaker is one of the rising stars in the field of personal development. Mr. Chris Widener has been speaking professionally since 1988. He shared the stage with U.S. presidential candidates, nationally known television anchors, best-selling authors, and professional athletes. He has spoken on motivation and leadership to some of the biggest companies in America, General Electric, Cisco Systems. He's even spoken at the Harvard Business School. Chris has written over 400 articles. Wow. He's a very proficient writer. He's written 5 books, produced close to 30 audio programs on leadership and motivation. His most recent book, I believe, is here today. It's called The Angel Inside, Creating a Life of Power and Beauty. His articles appear monthly in close to 200 publications. Chris's newsletter, Made for Success, has subscribers in over 100 countries, making it one of the most widely distributed success newsletters in the world. He's a featured contributing editor with Jim Rohn. He's been working on the 1-year success program with Mr. Rohn, as well as being one of John Maxwell's featured maximum impact speakers. So get ready, get fired up. Let's raise the roof. A great big welcome from the state of Washington, Chris Widener.
Thanks. Have a great time. I will. Thank you. Thank you. "1969, I was 3 years old. My dad was 40 years old. And in 1969, my dad made $90,000 a year. Now, $90,000 a year is not bad money in 1969, is it? $90,000 ain't bad money in 2004. 1970, I'm 4 years old. My dad goes to the doctor. They tell him you have cancer. You got 6 months to live. There's nothing we can do for you. 6 months later, he dies. 4 years old, left without a father. Now, the problem is, in 1969, he made $90,000. He should have had a lot of life insurance. He had $30,000 worth of life insurance. Here's my parenthetical statement to all of you who are underinsured. Get more insurance. I was decided that if I wanted to be an insurance salesman, I could make an awful lot of money just telling my story. Because in 1969, my family, we lived in Sandpoint Country Club. Very prestigious country club in Seattle. We lived in a big house. My mom and dad drove Cadillacs. There were no Lexus or, any of those Infinities or whatever. My mom had to sell that house because her payment was $450 a month. Can you believe that? She wishes she'd have kept it now. The problem is she had to sell it because my father was underinsured. So we moved out and we went in 1 year, from being comfortably high class to being comfortably lower middle class. My mom had to go back to work for the first time in many, many years. She went back. She was selling real estate. She was gone at night. I grew up basically as a latchkey child before there was the term latchkey child. Carried my key around my neck on a string. Was feeding myself dinner by the time I was 7 because my mom was out selling real estate, trying to do the best she could to give me what I needed to have. My brothers and sisters, much older than me, they moved out very quickly. And I began to get angry. You can imagine, you lose your dad and all of a sudden you're kind of raising yourself. And I began to get very angry. I began to get very bitter. I began to cause many, many problems for my mother. In 4th grade, I can never forget this day. My mom says, hey, come get in the car. We get in the car and we're driving down the road. And I said, where are we going? She said, we're going to visit Aunt Rochelle and Uncle Paul. I said, hey, great. Aunt Rochelle and Uncle Paul. And I said, how long are we staying? She said, well, I'm staying about 2 hours. You're staying about 2 years. Now, you got to understand, my Uncle Paul was a log truck driver. My Aunt Rochelle was a bus driver. Her nickname was Sarge. My mom thought that Aunt Rochelle and Uncle Paul were going to, whip me into shape. Well, they whipped me, but not much into shape. They lived in a little town called North Bend, Washington. Now, how many of you remember the TV show Twin Peaks? Some twisted folks live in Twin Peaks, right? Twin Peaks is based in North Bend, Washington, and let me tell you, it wasn't too far from the truth. So I lived there for 2 years. I come back. Now I'm in 6th grade. Come back to live with my mother because my Aunt Rochelle and Uncle Paul threw up their hands and said, no way, we can't. We got our own kids to deal with. By the time I was in 6th grade, I began to drink alcohol. 7th grade, I began to smoke marijuana every single day. Probably explains my 1.4 grade point average in 7th grade. Smoked opium for the first time in 8th grade. More than one occasion, I had some gentlemen from the Federal Bureau of Investigation show up on our front doorstep. Let's see, the first time was we were living in that house, 7th grade. Counted last night just to make sure I had the count right. I lived in 10 homes growing up. Went to 13 schools. Now, you know you're in trouble with the cops when they aren't wearing uniforms. When they show up in the suits and they do the little flip of the badge thing, you know you've gotten into the deep waters, right? Kicked out of class, written referrals. There's sometimes they just kick you out of class, get out of here, and then there's a time they write you up and they send you down, you got to talk to the vice principal. 47 times my sophomore year. That's like once every 3.5 days. It was a good thing I was dating the principal's daughter. Probably the only thing that kept me from getting expelled. By the time I was in 7th grade, I had 3 jobs. The real job was I was a ball boy for the Seattle Supersonics. My first year there, we lost the world championship. Second year there, we won the world championship. Probably the only thing that kept me from going completely over the edge. Because my other 2 jobs where I scalped tickets to local professional and amateur sporting events, I did pretty well at that, actually. Long before there was Ticketmaster, there was Chrismaster. And then, of course, like every 7th grader, I bet the ponies at Longacres Racetrack. I won my first daily double at age 13, $272. Not bad. I was definitely a kid going in the wrong direction. I look at my life there, and I got 4 kids I'll tell you about in a little bit, but sometimes I look at them and I think, man, when I was your age, you don't know how good you got it. Now, I grew up without any sort of moral training, any sort of religious training. Never went to church, ever. Well, take that back, twice. Once was a midnight mass. I slept through it. And the other was a Christmas midnight mass. And the other was another Christmas time service we went to. I slept through that, too, even though it was during the day. One day, when I was a junior in high school, a good friend of mine, my pot-smoking buddy, invited me to come spend the night. Saturday night. Hey, no problem. So we went to spend the night, and his mother said, now, don't forget, we're going to Sunday school in the morning. I thought, hey, I haven't tried Sunday school. I've tried everything else. So I went to Sunday school. Why I stayed going to this little tiny Lutheran church in North Bend, Washington, I don't know. But for some reason I did. And the summer between my junior and my senior year, I became a Christian. My life went completely going this direction to completely going this direction. Now let's jump forward 20 years, 21 years. I want to tell you a little bit about my life. I've got a wonderful wife of 16 years, Lisa. We got married. We met in college at Concordia College in Moorhead, Minnesota. I've got 4 great children. I have a little boy who's 14, not so little anymore. He's a freshman in high school. Then I got a 13-year-old girl, a 10-year-old girl, a 9-year-old girl, and that's it. I look at my life now and I say, man, this is just amazing. I've got a great career. I get to travel around the country and speak to groups all over the country. I get to work with great people like John Maxwell and Jim Rohn, Dennis Whaley, Brian Tracy. My two best friends that I spend the most time with, one's the chief financial officer of the Seattle Mariners, the other's the Republican nominee for governor of the state of Washington this year. I just look around and I just go, man alive, I got a pretty good life. And I'll tell you, about 2 years ago, the president of Jim Rohn International came to me and he said, Chris, do you know what your greatest strength is? And I said, well, probably talking. My mom's still amazed that people pay me to do what she told me all those years to stop. You know, 2 days ago, we closed on my dream house. It was built when I was a junior in high school. And I remember for 21 years, I remember when it was being built, because it was built out near where I live. For 21 years, I've driven by that house, and I've said, I'm going to buy that house someday. The problem is, it sits behind a 7-foot wrought iron fence all across the property, 10 acres, right on the river. We have 2,500 feet of riverfront. And I realized after we put the offer down that from the road, you can't even see the house. All you can see is the roof. So for 21 years, I drove by that fence saying, I'm going to buy what's under that roof someday. It's a great house. It's Spanish-style stucco, red tile roof, 4,500 square feet. I got a 1,000-square-foot pool house, which, of course, is right next to the pool. I look at my life and I just go, man, my life is so good. I've been so blessed. So I figured, Kyle says to me, you know what your biggest gift is that's made you so successful in life? I said, well, I think it's talking. He said, no, your biggest gift is the ability to influence other people. Your ability to connect with people at such high levels. My mentor in business was the former CEO of Mars Candies, $25 billion a year. So I stepped back for a moment. I thought, okay, is that really true? I wanted to first figure that out. And then I began to look at my life and say, what is it about me that I didn't even know about myself, but I was doing sort of innately, and I had learned because of, just things that I'd accidentally learned or things that I learned because I needed to survive? What is it about what I do as I interact with other people that's allowed me to influence other people? And through that process of about a year of writing and thinking and putting things together, I came up with what I want to talk to you about today. Secrets of influence, becoming a leader that other people want to follow. Secrets of influence, becoming a leader that other people want to follow. As John Maxwell would say, that there's one word definition of leadership, and that is influence. Your ability to influence other people. I would go a step further and say that your entire ability to be successful in life is based on your ability to influence other people. Pure and simple. Now let's think about that for a minute. You've been influencing, for better or for worse, to a great degree, to a lesser degree, from the time you were born. Think about it. The very beginning, you're 6 months old, right? You're hungry. You don't even know that you're hungry. Dad's sitting on the couch, right? And you're hungry, and what do you have to do? What do babies do? They scream, "Rah!" Right? And you're trying to influence Dad to turn off the TV and to come in and to get you some food. Your survival depends on your ability to influence Dad to get off of the chair and come and feed you a little bit of, here's the airplane, open wide, into the hangar kind of thing. Of course, as you grow up, now you're 7, 8, 9 years old, and you want a bike for Christmas, right? So you learn to influence your parents. And if your kids are like my kids, they influence you like this. Can I get a bike? 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 Finally, it's like, yes, you'll get a bike. I'll give you 2 bikes. Just shut up. So you're learning the art of influence. Then you're in high school. And I can only speak from a guy's perspective. But remember, guys, you're at the dance and look across that room and the disco ball's spinning, and for some of you, Elvis was playing. And you see that girl, and what do you got to do? You got to influence her to leave the wall and dance with you. So you're honing your influence skills. Then you have to influence that college admissions counselor. Then you have to influence that professor and convince him that indeed you were sick all weekend and couldn't get your paper done.